Okay, so we're getting started. Welcome to the Selling Buildings Book Club, the Selling Buildings Book Club. I love this book. I love the cover, Bob. I love the cover. I love the book. I love everything about it. So, yeah, I read the book last night. The chapter we'll discuss today for I think the 28th time. I'm keeping track every time I read this book. So, Bob, I want to tell you, I got a text, and I can actually show it to you, but I don't know if it's gonna work here. I got a text this morning from a individual broker, capital markets broker in Oklahoma, and he said, I can't put the damn book down. I said, that's awesome. That's great. So it's working. So here's what's going to work. I'm going to talk about, and Bob and I are going to talk about, introduce you to the first chapter of Selling Buildings. And next month we'll do chapter 2, maybe chapter 2 and chapter 3. But right now we'll just do the intro and chapter 1. And then we will answer any questions you have, Bob or myself, if you're a broker or investor. Hey, do me a favor though, do that. Go in the chat box, everyone. Hey, Nina, go in the chat box. People in the waiting room. I got to get them in there too. So everyone go to the chat box right now and say either you're a broker or you're an investor. Just tell me if you're a broker or investor. Pick one, don't pick both. Pick broker, investor. Who are you? Broker, investor, let us know. So some investors, okay. Lots of brokers. Awesome.
And while people are doing that, Rod, I think it's important. I talked to a buddy of mine who's a broker here in town, and he said he read the book in 2 sittings, and he said, BK, what really surprised me was it seems like you didn't hide anything. You didn't avoid anything. You kind of talked about everything. I was really shocked at how transparent everything was. And, I thought about it. I'm like, look, I'm always very transparent about what I talk about. I think the nature of the way I do business, of only representing sellers, only working on exclusive listings, makes life such that there's no reason to really hide anything. And, I love talking about the business. So it's a completely unvarnished kind of perspective on what it is that we do every day. And, hopefully that resonates with folks.
I love it, and you are completely transparent during this book, which is great. Where you failed, where you succeeded, it was awesome. So, hey, someone from Brazil. Hey, it's a great question. Where are you from? Everyone, please help us. Where are you from today? Right now, where are you from? Tell us where you're from. From Brazil. I love that. Brazil. All throughout the U.S. Awesome.
I know somebody was going to be tuning in from Malaysia. According to LinkedIn. So hopefully that person from Malaysia, it's the middle of the night. If you've stayed up, hopefully it'll be worth your while.
Awesome. Just awesome. Okay. So BK, let's talk about the book. Let's talk about the book. Beautiful forward by Ryan Serhant, the icon of the residential world in New York. But in the introduction, it was pretty straightforward, guys. I just introduced Bob Knakal and Bob's introduction didn't give Bob justice or service at all. It didn't, right? Bob is, for all intents and purposes, and look, we work with brokers all over the world now, 17 years of doing this. Bob is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time when it comes to selling buildings. Bob, are we still at 2351 or has that changed?
2351, 2,351 buildings, over 41 years. Yep, that's still the number. No closings this week.
No closings this week. Okay, which is ironic because everyone understand this. He just said no closings this week, and I think it's ironic because Bob, based on 2,251 buildings in 41 years, I could do math. That's more than 1 building a week, correct? Okay.
1.1 buildings per week.
So everyone just let that consume that. Let that sit with you. The dude has sold in over 41 years, over 1 building a week. Now he hasn't sold one this week, so we got to pick up 2 tomorrow. The next week, I guess.
That's right. I'm slacking off this week.
You're slacking. And as I think it's Chazina, I think it is said, Bob, the week's not over yet. So don't count this week is over. The week's not over. Okay. So just look, if you look at Bob and I'm gonna give you some resources for those who don't know. You can go to bobknakal.com. Definitely, you can go to bobknakal.com, and I'll spell it out for you in here in the chat box. And Bob, well, tell them about bobknakal.com. What is it, Bob?
Okay, now bobknackal.com is something that actually my good buddy Ed Winslow thought would be a good idea to create. Ed was the first broker that we ever hired at Massey Knakal back in 1988. And he was with us for about 10 years and then went on to do other things. We kind of lost connection. And for my social media posts, I do a Throwback Thursday. And one of my Throwback Thursday posts, I mentioned, or I had a snippet from one of our newsletters that we used to send out. And it was a page from the newsletter and happened to have an introduction of Ed Winslow. This is a newsletter from 1989 and had Ed's picture in it and his profile. And he called me up and said, "Hey, Bob, you'll never get, I saw the post you did, how's things going?" And we reconnected. And he told me what he was doing in the field of SEO and maximizing the benefit that people got out of posting online and having websites and stuff like that. And we ended up having lunch, and he came into the office, and I was in the middle of organizing what was 22 boxes of old stuff that I had saved throughout the course of my career. And putting them into piles of different types of materials and things like that. But I had old newsletters and articles and marketing packages and marketing brochures and everything. And Ed said, "You know what, BK, we've got to put all this stuff on a website. This is unbelievable information." So it ended up being, I think, close to 7,000 pages of material that we put on bobknackal.com. It's broken down into a number of different categories and a bunch of writings and newsletters we did and a whole bunch of stuff that just kind of takes you through what has been 40 years of my brokerage career. But a lot of really interesting stuff. Then you can see how things have iterated over the years where, our first capabilities brochure was just a very small 8.5 by 11, maybe 10-page brochure that we used for many years. Then we moved on to an oversized green hardbound book that was about 80 pages. And today that has morphed into a library of 9 books, 9 oversized hardbound books that we use for our capabilities that are a book for each different product type, one that's just full of hundreds of testimonials from clients, one that talks about portfolios that we've sold, and just a number of different things. And now we're working on the next iteration of those books, which is to consolidate some of them. But you kind of, if you just journey around on the website, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff that we've done over the years in different ways to try to do this business more effectively.
And I think, and look, it's a library of deal stories, and it's amazing. Bobknackal.com. It's in the chat box. It's amazing, but the book will highlight the best. If you guys who haven't gotten it, the book highlights what we think is some of the key inflection points over Bob's career and over real estate in itself. And every chapter in this book will talk about the lessons for investors, and it will outline them. And Bob will share with you the lessons as an investor. Then I will share with you lessons as a broker. So here's lesson number 1 for all of you, that if you are paying attention, if there's lessons number 1, I was on the phone yesterday with a client, and she was telling about all the deal folders she had in her cabinet of 20 years of real estate. Some of you have been doing this for 30 years. Some of you have been doing this for 3 weeks. I don't know where you are. In fact, please put that in the chat box. How long have you been a broker? That would help me a great deal. Put in the chat box, how long you all been a broker? Put that in right now. But listen to this. Go back to your files. Everyone, as Bob did this, go back to your files and ask yourself, what's the story behind this deal? And just dictate it to yourself, put it in ChatGPT, whatever, right? Or your Google file. But you all have the ability to do these things. You do. You all have the ability to look back on your folders on deal transactions and say, oh, I got a commission for this. What was that? Why did I get this? What was the story? What was the motivation? You all can create a flood of content to position yourself as authorities in your market just by the content you already have and you're not using.
Yeah, and think about this. Think about this. And this is the way I've thought about it. And I feel so silly that I've wasted so much time over the course of my career by not doing this. But I've been doing, based upon my work with Rod, I've been doing this for about the last 10 years. But think about what goes into doing a transaction, whether you're a sales broker or a leasing broker or a mortgage broker. You have to find out the client wants to transact. Then you have to win the business. Then you win the business, then you have to execute the business, and how many months that takes, and how many phone calls, and how many emails, and how many everything you have to do, showings, whatever the case might be. Then you get the deal under contract, or you sign the lease, you end up closing the deal, you make your commission. Are you going to let all those dozens and maybe hundreds of hours just produce that one commission check and then not use that in the future? To the extent that you write a success story about it, you write a card, and that card goes over, reviews the challenges that you faced in the transaction, reviews the actions that you took, talk about the results that were produced, and then get a testimonial from the client. Then you have a piece of material that you can use for the rest of your career. Could you imagine if I had been doing this since 1984 and I had 2,351 success stories that I could use with various clients? And so what I do now, I probably have done 600 or 700 of these. And what I use them for, whenever a client has a particular challenge, they have a partnership dispute, let's say. I'll go into the library of all of these and I'll pull out every one where the main challenge was that there was a partnership dispute, and send them to the client saying, look, we've dealt with this 17 times. Here's the way we overcame these challenges 17 times. We have a property with a significant environmental problem. Oh, let me pull out the 37 deals we did where we had significant environmental problems and send these case studies and these success stories to the client. I know Rod hates when I use success stories. I use what case studies. They're called success stories. But imagine sending so many of these. And what I often do, we put them all into a hardbound book, and I generally tab the pages because there is benefit to flipping through dozens of pages to find the one that is just like that and find the other one that's just like that. Then it seems like, wow, you look how much stuff you've done. So you work so hard to source the transaction, win the transaction, fulfill the transaction, get your check, use that experience, use that time that you invested in doing that transaction to not only make today's commission, but to make commissions for you for the rest of your career.
Absolutely, Bob. We're gonna get to the book. So another lesson, folks. We do not call them case studies unless you do institutional deals. That might work. No one wants to read a case study. That's like Nyquil. Call them success stories. Okay, please call them success stories. You will get better resonate with your prospects. So, Bob, look, the first chapter is about your entree into commercial real estate brokerage. So let's go back and just tell you talk about this in the book, but and again, everyone who didn't buy the book, buy your damn copy right now. Right now. It's $24, cheese and crackers. Buy your copies right now. But anyway, Bob, give us, I believe this equation. I know I'm looking at some of you know my equation, right? My equation is real life is greater than real estate. It is, and it works. It works when you focus on real life, not real estate. Bob, where were you living? What were you doing? Tell me about you and your dad. What was Bob Knakal, 41 years ago? What was going on?
Yeah, well, I'll take you back to the college days. I was fortunate enough to attend the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and I'll be the first to admit that I got in because I was a pretty good baseball player, not because I was the smartest guy in my class. And I was also lucky that my high school baseball coach was the older brother of the baseball coach at Penn, which helped me get in. But go to the Wharton School in 1981. I want to be the next Gordon Gecko like every other kid that went to Wharton. And so we get to spring break my freshman year. And I'm like, okay, I've been very fortunate. I've never had a summer job until now, but I have to get one that'll look good on my resume for when I get out of school. So I'm going to try to get a job at an investment bank or a commercial bank for the summer. So I put a little resume together and I'm driving around, stopping at every investment bank and commercial bank I had identified. And I'm in Hackensack and I come out of a Payne Weber office after dropping my resume off. And across the hall, see this big sign, Coldwell Banker. I'm like, oh, great, another bank. Let me drop my resume off there. So I walked in, didn't see any tellers or anything, so I didn't understand what kind of bank this was, but I give them my resume, say, I'm looking for a summer job. Do you hire kids? They said, yes. Later that day, they called me and said, we'd like to interview you tomorrow. So I set up the interview for the next day, still thinking it was a bank. It's 1981, so there's no internet. So I go to the library the next morning to look up this bank. And when I see it's a real estate company, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go and work on real estate. But they were the only ones who were hiring college kids for the summer. I took the job, immediately loved it. That office was awesome. It was filled with a bunch of young, hardworking, energetic people. They seemed to be really happy. They were making a lot of money. They also were extraordinarily kind to me, which, they had a bunch of college kids in this summer internship program, and they treated us like we were one of them. I mean, we would go out for drinks after work on Fridays and hang at the bar till midnight. And it was just a very collegial environment, and I loved it. I spent my first summer driving around Morris County, New Jersey, logging information on every commercial building I saw. Those were industrial buildings, office buildings, retail properties for what CB called at the time their data bank. And so absolutely loved it. Went back my next summer.
Hold on, Bob. So your first job, this is so important. Your first job, and I did this in my first internship as well. So you were running around cataloging buildings, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
How many
Look
units?
out, look at the building, try to estimate what the size of the building was. And back in those days, we didn't have the kind of security we have today. You could walk into the building, well, go in the elevator, go upstairs, see who the tenants were, estimate how much square footage they had. And I just absolutely loved it. I had a Hagstrom map. I was driving around with the Hagstrom map down streets to find where commercial properties were. And
These kids have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah,
That's okay. Map, physical map. What? So,
that's it.
but
That's
folks,
it. Rich knows. Rich knows the Hagstrom map.
hold on. Folks, take away what he did, right? And if you all haven't done this yet, why, right? He's cataloging buildings. The map room is just an evolution of that first internship, 43 years ago or 41 years ago now, right? So actually more than that because you were an intern, 43 years ago now. So guys, you have to know this. You all have to understand. You have to know your market. That's what makes an authority broker over a commodity broker. You must know your market. So BK, I'm going to accelerate this a bit. So you had your internships. That went well. They offered you a job. What did you do when they offered you a job in Jersey?
Well, I went back my next summer, ran that summer internship program. My third summer, I got my New Jersey real estate license and was an assistant to a senior broker who was an industrial guy, Tom Mulaney, still a friend of mine. And we were called a runner back then.
Yes.
And then Ed Tarr, who was the boss of that office, says, "Hey, Bobby, we'd love to have you work here full time when you get out of school next year." And I said, "Oh, thanks, Ed. I really appreciate that. But would you mind introducing me to the guys at CB in New York?" For whatever, when I was a kid, my dad's parents still lived on East 73rd Street in Manhattan. And that was the old Czech neighborhood. Both my mom and dad were Czech. Different neighborhoods were different ethnicities back in those days, and the Czech neighborhood in New York was in the low 70s.
We got signed exclusive.
Hold on one second, Bob. Bob, you're gonna have to unmute yourself for a second, okay? Go ahead, buddy. Unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. My mom and dad grew up in the Czech neighborhood. They met at a Czech music school. My dad played the violin. My mom played the piano. And But we used to go in to visit my grandparents once every couple of months. And when we'd go into Manhattan, I grew up in a little town, Maywood, New Jersey, in northern New Jersey, which is really a quintessentially like Mayberry RFD kind of place. And every time we'd go into Manhattan, my eyes would bug out looking at all the big buildings. And so I knew I wanted to work in the city or at least give it a shot. So the guys at CB in New Jersey made arrangements for me to talk to the folks in New York. Came in for the interview. They offered me a job. I took it, and my senior year, I was so excited. I couldn't wait to get out of school to get into Manhattan and start selling buildings.
Okay, so Bob, I'm going to read a sentence, actually two sentences on page 21. We're going to talk about your first day on the job. So my bus pulled into the Port Authority at 6 a.m. I took the subway to 53rd and Madison and then walked down 49th. I took the elevator up to the 4th floor. It was 6:20 a.m. So Bob, you're in the office at 6:20 a.m. on your very first day. What time did you get up? And you were living in Jersey, right? So tell me about that scenario.
Well, I was restricted because the first bus of the day was 5:15. So I couldn't get in any earlier. I probably would have if there was an earlier bus, but I was up at about 4:30, caught the 5:15 bus, which I had to drive to, then took the bus to Port Authority, then took the subway up to the office. And I remember that first day, I wasn't in the office at 6:20 because I got off the elevator and the floor is dark. The door to the office was closed. The lights were all off. So I'm like, what the heck do I do? So I literally sat on the floor. And about 10 minutes later, the elevator opens, and off the elevator floor walks Paul Massey. And he was kind of startled that I was sitting there. And I said, hey, I'm Bob Knakal. I'm starting today. I don't have a key or anything. Could you let me into the office? So he opened the door, let me in. I sat in the reception area for like an hour and a half waiting for the boss to show up. He kind of said, hey, welcome, there's your desk, there's your phone. Massey just got out of a training program. Follow him around, show him where the coffee, he'll show you where the coffee machine is. And at the time, CB had about 50, 60 brokers leasing office space, about 20 in the store leasing division. And there were 4 people in investment sales. It was Paul and 3 other brokers, all of whom had about 20 years of experience. And on day 2, Paul and I were having lunch together, and I was like, hey, these guys with 20 years of experience don't seem to notice that we're around. And he's like, yeah, they don't spend a lot of time talking to me. So I said, hey, Paul, why don't we just work together, split everything 50-50 and see how that goes? And that literally was the start of a 30-year partnership. So again, you'll see, you guys will see that luck plays a very, very big hand in a lot of what happened to me. I am a believer that the harder you work, the luckier you get, but I think you got to have luck on your side as well.
And Bob, I don't know if you know this story. Ironically, my first day in brokerage in Tampa, Florida, I moved from New York to Tampa to take a brokerage job. I met some kid named Dave. He's been my best friend for over 40 years. He has. I've been in his weddings and my wedding. First day I met him on the bullpen. So I get it. I get it. So everyone understand this. If you don't know about Massey Knakal, it becomes the dominant firm in New York. Imagine that, the dominant firm in New York. Incredible. So, but before we get there, before we get to the Massey Knakal days, you're still working with Paul. It's your first year on the job. Tell us about your first listing. Tell me about your first listing. What was that like? You guys finally got your first listing.
Yeah, the first thing we did, we analyzed the market. So we studied every sale within our territories. And initially, I talk often about being a specialist in your market, being a niche specialist. And originally what we were going to do is work territories that were the entire Upper East Side of Manhattan. And that goes from 55th Street up to 96th Street on the East Side. Paul was going to work from 5th to Lex. I was going to work Lex to 1st. And we started cataloging it, meaning taking pictures of every building, getting information on every building. And after a couple of weeks, we're like, look, this is just too massive. This isn't going to work. There's too much here. So we adjusted, and ended up, Paul did 55th Street to 63rd. I did 55th to 63rd. He did Lex to 5th to Lex. I did Lex to 1st. We have relatively small territories, but I will tell you that I can still walk down those streets in my mind and picture every single building because we were so entrenched in that market.
So hold
And
on, were you taught a territory system? Because you go on to perfect it later on, but were you taught a territory system at Coldwell Banker initially during your intern days?
yeah,
Or-
CB promoted that and suggested that we did work on a territory basis. But the problem and where the wheels fell off the bus is that the rules were only the rules for certain people. And the minute that one of the more senior guys got a lead in our territory, they went to the boss and said, "Hey, look, I'm not bringing these two young punks in on this deal. Forget about it. I'm not doing it." And the boss backed them up. So that really upset us, and that's why after 2 years, our second full year of brokering, we actually were the top salespeople in the office. I remember this is 1986.
Well, hold on, you're gonna hear yourself. You're gonna hear yourself. I want to go continue with the book, okay? But folks, again, the lesson here is Bob started a territory system. Now he perfected it later on, but he started it right from day one. He learned it at CB. I mean, I know there's so many generalists out there in brokerage, and you cannot be an authority. Now, if you work in a tertiary market, sure, it works. But in a secondary primary market, you're not going to become an authority being a generalist. You got to know your territory. You got to know your product. Whether you're selling or leasing, it doesn't matter. You got to know it cold, like Bob did right out of the gate. So, Bob, go back to the first listing, though. Why did your first listing, not your first sale? We'll get to that in a minute. Your first listing.
First listing was 115 East 55th Street. I remember it was owned by a guy named John Coleman, who owned 6 or 7 Ritz-Carlton hotels. And so he used this 5,000 square foot, 4-story commercial townhouse as his headquarters. It was the north side of 55th Street between Park and Lex. And we were making our cold calls, knew he wanted to sell, and went over and met with him. And we had all our data. We studied all the sales for 3 years, knew all the buildings that sold, what the prices were, et cetera, which we were able to do because we shrunk the area that we were covering down to a manageable size. And so we told him what we thought the property was worth. We put together a proposal for him. That was something that was great that came out of the CB days. They taught us to deal with this private capital market the same way you deal with a big institutional building, which we did. But Coleman just wouldn't hire us. So we met with this guy 8 or 9 times. And I remember Paul and I, Coleman was he's a hospitality guy. He always dressed to the nines. So we went, got our shoes shined every time before the meeting. I mean, we smelled like shoe polish every time we walked into this guy's building. And finally, he gave in and finally said, "All right, I'll give you guys a shot." Because our pitch was, look, we don't have any other buildings to work on. We're only going to work on exclusives. We have nothing else to work on. You'll have 100% of our attention. And we basically had to beg this guy to hire us. But he did hire us. And I remember it was a great, great feeling to get that first listing.
Now, Bob, I bet you even know what suit you wore back then, correct?
I don't remember.
How many suits did you have back then?
I had 2. I don't know why, but I had a navy blue suit and a brown suit. Why I had a brown suit, I'll never know.
Because it was the 80s.
My dad was a high school principal, so maybe he gave me dressing tips. But 2 suits, 5 permanent press shirts that I threw in the washing machine every Friday night and then hung on hangers to dry over the weekend. That was those are the early days. Not to sound like I walked uphill to school both ways, but it was a little modest in the early days.
Okay, so you get your first listing, congratulations. But that wasn't your first sale. Your first sale is an incredible story. So tell us about the first sale, and then tell us what happens before the day before close.
Yeah, so the first sale actually, I always say that I only represent sellers exclusively. The fact is that of the 2,351 properties I've sold, I was the exclusive agent for 2,349 of them. I've done 2 deals where I was not the exclusive agent for the seller, and the very first one was one where I was not. where CB had a client, American Medical International out of Atlanta, that was looking for a building for the first MRI facility in New York. And I guess the boss thought, oh God, this is probably a low probability piece of business. Let's give it to the two young kids. So we were running around town with AMI trying to find a building that, interestingly, couldn't be too close to a subway line, because the magnetic pull of the subway train would throw the machine off. So we had to be, at least like 500 feet away from a subway so that the magnetic pull of the train wouldn't impact the machine. But we identified several buildings. They ended up liking one on the Upper East Side, 1421 3rd Avenue, which was at 84th and 3rd, which was a 20,000 square foot vacant furniture showroom. And we get a call, we put it under contract. We get a call from the seller the day before the closing. There's a fire in the building. The building almost burns down. It totally charred the first 2 floors of the building. And the owner called up and said, oh my gosh, I don't know what to tell you. The building burned. And we called up, we fully expected the seller to say, oh, forget it, give me my deposit back, I'm moving on. And the real estate director at AMI said, don't worry about it. You just saved me some money on demolition cost. And I guess they just really, really had all their plans and really wanted this building. So they ended up closing it. And again, very, very lucky. But the first building I sold almost lost the sale because it burned down the night before.
Okay, so in the book Selling Buildings, if you don't have it, go buy it right now. I'm gonna push that till I die. in this book, Bob, you talk about a couple of things, and I'll go to 28, because every story has, well, what are the lessons for investors? Some of you are investors, but many of you are brokers, and I share with you the broker lessons. But Bob, one thing you said is on page 28, so be solution oriented in negotiations. When issues arise at the closing, the resolution came through compromise. The buyer agreed to pay for a violation to close the deal. They maintained the focus on the big picture rather than minor details. So how is important, because look, you've never been, as far as I've known you, commission driven ever. So you're deal driven, which is pretty wild. So talk about the focus on the solution rather than the transaction.
Yeah, I think that so many people get bogged down in the minutia. And I think that part of our job as brokers is to try to encourage clients to look behind the small stuff, look beyond it. I think if you look at one of my favorite clients that I've dealt with over the course of my career, Sam Chang, and this will illustrate looking beyond the small details, and sometimes not even so small details. But Sam, I probably sold 25 or 26 development sites to Sam Chang. He's a hotel developer here in New York. And I was selling him many years ago. I was selling him a property. I'm making up the address. I don't remember exactly, but 325 East 33rd, West 33rd Street. And Sam calls me and he signs a contract to buy it. It's a 50 by 100-foot parking lot. And he calls me and he says, Bob, we had the closing was like the next day or something. And he says, hey, I'm standing in front of the parking lot. There's still parking cars here. What's going on? And I said, no, Sam, they're not parking there. He says, no, I'm standing right in front of it. He says, I'm at 325 West 35th Street. I said, it's not 325 West 35th. It's 325 West 33rd. Both of these properties were 50 by 100-foot parking lots. And this guy didn't know which one he was buying and showed up the next day and closed anyway. And he was under the misinterpretation that he was buying on 35th Street when he was really buying on 33rd Street. So, same zoning, same size, same everything. But sometimes you just can't sweat the small stuff. You have to look beyond it. And I think as brokers, if we know that the seller wants to sell and we know that the buyer wants to buy, if they get into a fight over a $5,000 sidewalk violation, come on, give me a break. Don't let the deal blow up because of that. So sometimes it's trying to get people to look at the big picture and not get so bogged down with the small stuff.
Completely agree. So, look, what we're going to do, we're going to open the floor out for questions, but the objective of Bob and I doing this is to bring this book more to life for you all and share with you the stories behind the stories and answer the questions as we move forward. When we do this next month, we're going to dive into Bob leaving CBC, starting Massey Knakal, looking for a business loan, seeing the trials and tribulations of starting a brokerage. Many of you on this call have been there. I've been there, right? It's a blast. But we're gonna get to all that and more. The financial crisis, 9/11, the pandemic, all those cycles we'll talk about in the months ahead for you. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna give you 3 things you should remember, okay? And then we're gonna open the floor to you and ask, and then I want you to ask any question you have of Bob and myself. So here's what I take away from chapter 1 was that I find still that many brokers look at this as their practice of brokerage more as a hobby, sometimes a vacation versus a vocation. Where Bob, he never once took it as anything but his business and his livelihood. Bob isn't a commercial real estate broker. I mean, brokerage is what he does. That's who he is. It's just what it is. Most brokers lack that conviction to their craft, and that conviction and lack of it is what's holding you back. So that was one thing I took away. Obviously Bob always showed up polished. He did. He still does today. Look at the guy in a shirt and tie, and it's 2025, which is awesome. So he's always polished. He's always first class. He's always thinking about the client. Being client oriented has always been one of the driving forces that makes him successful. It is. It makes brokers successful. It is. So just remember those things as you move forward. We're gonna give you some more things to think about, but for right now, anyone have any questions, go raise your hand and I'll try to unmute if I can find you. But go ahead, any question in the chat box, throw it in the chat box and let me see you, okay? Anyone have any questions for Bob or myself?
Yeah, Rod, I think there are a bunch of questions in the chat box.
Okay, good, okay, great. Arena, okay, so let's go first. Bob, how are you, well, let's start with this. First question, Bob, how are you currently using AI in your real estate practice?
Yeah, using AI in 3 ways. The first 2 are very similar, and that's in prospecting and deal execution, which really are nothing more than funneling processes. We're going from thousands of people to hundreds of people to dozens of people to a few people. AI is really instrumental in making each of those processes more efficient and effective. And then we're using it in data interpretation. And data interpretation has the biggest potential use, the most powerful use of AI, because AI can do millions of calculations in a second, but is going to be the toughest for the industry to use, mainly because the data sets that we have in our industry are really very, very poor. And let me just talk about this, because I could talk about this for hours, but let me just try to be succinct about this.
1 minute, Bob. Go ahead, give it.
Yeah, one minute. So the absolute numbers are meaningless. If I tell you that in 2019 in Manhattan, there was $26.3 billion of sales volume, most of you probably have no idea about what that number is all about. But if I tell you that in 2015, at the peak of the market, volume was 57.4 billion, and I tell you that in 2020, at the bottom of the market, it was 11.1 billion, the 26.3 starts to have some feel to it. So it's the relationship between numbers in a data set that matter. Are they going up? Are they going down? How much are they going up? How much are they going down? Further, the relationship between those numbers completely lose their integrity if you have not calculated the numbers using the same exact methodology over the course of the data set. And look, I've seen firsthand experience where within a 6-year period at a firm I was at, we had 3 different heads of research in New York, all of whom had different ideas about what to count and what not to count. Is it just deals over 10 million? Is it just deals over 500,000? Are you calculating cap rates on trailing 12 or forward 12? Well, if you're using different ways of calculating data, the relationship falls apart. So you have to have good data sets. It's the area where AI can be the most powerful, but it's going to be the most difficult to actually use. And we're excited because I have data sets that are 40 years old that have been used. We've used the same methodology to calculate the data. And so we're applying AI models to those data sets and producing some really interesting results.
And Michael, from our part with our clients and even internally at Massimo, we're using AI specifically right now for accelerating a broker's prospecting and marketing abilities. It's there now with agents, call agents, text bots, it's all there. We use it for our clients only, but my AI guy was just here for the week in my house. We just planned everything out. We're going to launch it publicly in July, give everyone access to that platform for prospecting and marketing with AI. Certainly the data sets is a killer. I think Bob will have one, I will have one, you will all eventually have one. You will have AI agents orchestrating your firm. Every one of you will, probably definitely by the end of 2026, if not before. AI agents is the next big horizon for all of us. And unfortunately, soon, everyone listens, this is a fact, this isn't a theory. Brokerage activities will be replaced by agents in many cases in the next 3 years. Not the facilitator, not the negotiator, not what Bob does, not the authorities, but the commodity brokerage will be a thing of the past. Sorry, but it will. So not for a downer, but this is life. This is where we're going. So you better learn your AI really quick. And I'll give you a quick way to do that in a second. Okay, so Bob, number two.
Hold on a second. I see my good buddy Justin Rice Moore has his hand raised. So
we got a lot of questions. We got to wait for him. Okay. At what point of your career did you become selective in just listings you took on in your territory, right? When did small deals become too small for you to be worth your time?
About a year ago.
I love it. Just a year ago.
That's one of my weaknesses is that I am too prone to keep taking deals. And now I finally, through a lot of raps in the head that Rod has given me, the philosophy is this: brokers have two main assets: market knowledge and time. You constantly are improving your market knowledge. And I always used to say you can't make more time, but I was wrong. You can create time. How do you create time? You create time by using it more effectively. So let me give you an example.
We got a lot of questions, Bob. We got a lot of questions. So go ahead.
Let's say I'm a generalist, and last week I sold a retail property, an apartment building, and an office building. I'm pitching an office building this week. That office building owner that I'm pitching wants to hear everything about the office building I sold last week. Couldn't care less about the retail property and the apartment building I sold. So 2/3 of my effort last week is not helping me at all get this week's assignment. Only a third is. If I had sold 3 office buildings last week and I'm pitching an office building this week, every minute I spent last week working is helping me get this week's assignment. That's how you create time. So I've learned that the more you can focus, and again, it's much easier in a bigger, more dense market than in a smaller or tertiary market, but the more you can focus just on what you do so that everything you do is accretive towards getting the next one, that's your ability to actually create time out of thin air.
Okay, Bob, what's the one thing that you do every day?
Make prospect calls.
That's the right answer. That's it. Yes, Bob still makes prospect calls. 41 years in the business, he still makes prospect calls. That's the answer I was hoping you'd say. So, Bob, why did you decide only to represent sellers? And was this the right answer for you right out of the gate?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. Look, I am that first deal, right? The building almost burned down. We had no control. That we knew there were other buyers circling around. The reality is that almost every seller believes their property is worth more than it is. And when you have the assignment and you market it and you get the seller down to what the real market value is, there are 3 or 4 buyers that would buy at that price. So I've had plenty of situations where there are 5 buyers at the price, 4 of which are represented by brokers, and I'm representing one. And so if you're a broker representing one of those buyers, you have a 20% chance of making a deal, even though you're producing the best result you possibly could. It's very low probability business. And based on how ridiculous and how we realized how absolutely lucky we were with that first transaction, we said, let's never do this again. And so we said, let's make our value proposition very clear. We're only selling buildings. We're only representing sellers. We're only working on exclusives. We're only working in our territory. And that takes 6 seconds to say. There's nothing vague or opaque about it. It's understandable. And for us, it made the most. I know there's a lot of brokers do a lot of different things and are very successful doing them. But for me, I just felt like it was a much higher probability business.
Awesome. Bob, how many properties were manageable at one time for you to keep track of?
Well, the original territories were relatively small. I would say that they probably had in the order of magnitude of 600 to 700 properties, and I don't have an exact number because that was quite a while ago. But we thought that we at that time our goal was to make 40 connections with owners a week, and that's what we did. And since it then grew to 50 a week, and since the pandemic, it's been 100 a week. I think that the right size audience to go after, I think, is 1,000 to 1,200 owners, which should represent in any given market. That should be between 5 and 10,000 properties based on multiple ownerships. You're going to find that you probably.
I want crystal clear here what you just said. Bob, can you repeat what you just said? How many owners? How many properties?
1,000 to 1,200 owners, who are the people you're trying to call, probably own between 5 and 10,000 properties. Some people will own 1. Some people own 30 or 40. So it's probably 5 to 10,000 buildings. If you have a normal turnover rate, which is probably about 2.5% of the total stock, that's going to give you 50, 60, 70 sales in your area, and with a 20% market share, that's going to give you a great income. So that's the way we looked at it.
And something else he shared that you guys, again, everyone, I say you guys, I apologize, ladies, it's my New York side. Bob, you said originally when I first met you, we were trying to have 40 connections, not dials, 40 connections a week. But now, what's the number of connections you try every week?
100.
100. Everyone think about that. Talk to 100 decision makers a week. That may take 150 calls. And Bob, it takes less calls because he's in relationships. That may take 200-300 calls, dials, right? So yes, get a dialer, everybody, get a dialer.
And I only discovered that I was able to do that during the pandemic when I was sequestered up in my house in the woods in Connecticut and didn't have any interruptions. And I just was banging the phones all day long. And I said, I remember the first full week, I had like 122 connections or something like that. I was, oh my gosh, I've never done that in my career. And then routinely, that first in 2020, I averaged 114 connections a week, and that was the highest total I've ever had. My goal is 100 a week, and in 2024 I was at 89. Because it was a year I've spent a lot of time trying to get BKREA up and running and had a lot of things outside of prospecting that I was busy doing. But, I think a really great goal is 50. If you can get 50 connections a week, you're going to be getting a lot of leads and be doing a lot of business.
Love it. Okay, Bob, next question. I'll answer first and get you to think about it. You can answer. I love this question. Thank you, Jim Pryor. Bob, what was the one thing you learned? I'll answer first, Bob. What's the one thing you learned in working with Rod? And Rod, what's the one thing you learned in working with Bob? Well, I've learned so many things working with Bob. So it'd be ridiculous to say what's the one thing. But if you said, what's the one thing I initially learned to work with Bob, is that everyone, regardless of their level of experience or success, everyone can grow. When I first worked with Bob, he was making $6 million. Repeat that, $6 million in commission. Within 3 years, we got to $18 million. So I learned, and it gave me a big boost of confidence to say, you know what, we can help everybody, because if we can help Bob freaking Knakal, and I didn't say freaking, we can help anybody. And that's what I learned, Jim. Bob, how about you?
Yeah, the big aha moment working with Rod, and there have been several, but the one big one that I still always remember is he said to me one day, "Hey, BK, how are you keeping in touch with your inactive clients?" So I said, "Inactive? What do you mean? The people I've sold buildings for in the past? The past clients?" He said, "No, they're not past. They're not dead. They're inactive clients. How are you keeping in touch with them?" I said, "I'm not really, proactively focused on contacting them." He said, "You know what an opportunity you're missing? These people you build relationships with, you worked for them before, they like you, they had a successful transaction with you, and you're not keeping in touch with them regularly." So I made up a list of everybody that I had sold buildings for, and started to blend them into my regular prospecting routine. And what I found was that in my calling of my normal prospecting, I would get a lead for every 20 connections that I made. And when I am calling my inactive client list, I get a lead out of every 11 calls I make. So it's almost twice as productive calling those people than calling other people. And so that's been part of my routine ever since I discovered that. But that was really such a great and obvious tip, but very, very life-changing.
Well, Bob, we have time for one last question. Again, everyone, I'll give you some announcements before you don't leave yet. I'll give you some freebie things you want to know about. Bob, data sets. You love your data. I love data. What's an example of a data set? Give us one example, like a almanacle. What's one example?
So we're coming out. I'm not going to talk about the almanacle, but I'm going to talk about the Knakal Land Index, which in New York, most companies will say, well, last year the average price per buildable foot, and New York is an as of right zoning jurisdiction, so every development site is pre-entitled, but they'll say the average price last year was $412 a foot. And to me, that's like if I told you that last year the average price of a peach, a bowling ball, and a 2x4 was $11.50, because different product types within the land sector perform very differently. So what we've done is we have our data set for land value disaggregates every transaction into 5 buckets: residential rental, residential condo, hotel, office, and then a miscellaneous bucket. The miscellaneous bucket has everything in it that doesn't fit into the first 4: educational properties, healthcare properties, retail properties, what have you. And we have taken that data and we go all the way back to 1984 with it. We have studied 2,438 transactions now. And we're applying AI models to each of these. That's the data set where we have for 41 years, we have 5 numbers over the course of that whole time. And we're applying AI models to the fluctuations in those value changes to try to get some insights and some predictive information about where the market's going.
Awesome. Okay, so folks, let me give you some quick things to think of. First of all, at the end of this call, you get to rate the call. Please, everyone rate the call and leave comments so we know how to serve you better. Bob and I love feedback. We grow through feedback. If you hate this call, tell me you hate the call. We should have done this, we should have done that. Let us know. This is our first time, so we're just going to get better. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you really love the call though, post it on social media. Let us know. If you bought a book and have the book, put a picture of you in the book. We're going to give some prizes away. Put a picture of you in the book on social media, and Bob and I will give some prizes away, okay? Put these dates in your calendar. Because you're going to want to know them. On June 19th, next month, if you have no idea how to spell AI, if you have no idea what AI is, free 3-hour program. Maybe limits like the first 300 people. Myself and my director of innovation, Connor Cato, will give you an intro to AI for brokers. So if you have no idea what it is, June 19th, we're gonna promote that next week. On June 27th, Bob and I will do this again, June 27th, same time. It's free. Come to that thing on June 27th. We're talking to Bob Cycles, talking about the SNL crisis, his first deals, his first loans, everything. It's going to be phenomenal, that next call. Okay. And then, though not for free, but not expensive, on November 19th, 2025, I've gone to contract with this. We're going to do something that has never been done in commercial real estate brokerage. Has never been done. Bob will be part of it. So you should all block off November 19th, 2025. I guarantee you're going to say, I can't believe they're doing this. It's going to be absolutely incredible. So block that down, get your whole team involved as well. You get more details over the summer. Okay, everyone, we appreciate Bob. Anything before you leave? Hey, Bob, anything else?
Yeah, no, just thanks everybody for joining, and hopefully you'll join the next one. Please feel free to ask any questions you want. I don't think I've ever been asked a question about real estate that I haven't answered. So and there's been a lot of water under the bridge over all these years, but I'm always happy to share with people to the extent that this helps you, helps your career, helps you grow, gives you a tip. That's the whole intent. I will tell you that, I've been, there's a lot of things about my Massey Knakal legacy that I'm very proud of. We 3x the competition in terms of number of buildings sold from 2001 to 2014, according to CoStar. Number 2 firm sold 1,300 buildings. We sold over 4,000. So we were a little local popcorn stand that was competing with regional, national, and global companies, and we were eating their lunch every single day for 14 years in a row. I'm proud of that. We sold the business for $100 million. I'm very proud of that. But the thing I'm most proud of by far is that today in the New York City investment sales world, there are 32 companies or divisions of companies that are owned by or run by people that learn the business at Massey Knakal. And that is by far and away my proudest legacy. And so to the extent that I can help you do better, be better, believe in yourself more, give you an edge, give you an advantage, I'm here to help you because it is completely rewarding for me. I love this business. I love the job, but helping other people has really become something that resonates with me, and I want to help you do better.
Amen, brother. We feel the same. Everyone, we appreciate you. See you soon. Let's launch off and have a good day, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Everybody, have a great weekend.